Hello, welcome to the Axiom podcast. I'm your host today, Devin Dash, and I'm here with my co-host, Joey Brannon, and our very special guest, Mark Clark. He is a partner at Prestige Planning RM, Risk Management, and we are delighted. Mark is a good friend, a longtime friend of the firm. Mark is actually a client and as well, so we are excited about that. But they do a lot of great things, both on the risk management side for property and casualty insurance, and I'm not going to go too far into bioing you, but they do a lot of other cool things on the financial advisory and wealth planning side. So, Mark, thank you for coming on the show. We are excited to have you.
Thanks for having me. We're already having fun behind the scenes, so this should be.
We're an hour in. We just hit the record button. Yeah, no, it's been fun. Yeah, we're excited.
I promise I won't slurp my coffee live, so Tavish doesn't have to edit any of this out. So.
We appreciate that. Well, let's just start where we start every episode. Kind of your story of origin, a little bit of background about yourself, and how'd you get into financial advising, financial planning, and to tell us about our audience, about your experience as a financial advisor.
Well, good thing it's a 2-hour show. Yeah. We'll be fine, right? No, I'm kidding. I'm passionate about people. I'm a people person. If you stick me behind a computer or, tell me to work out a spreadsheet, I'll go bonkers. One of my sayings is you throw me in my round room and tell me to find the corner. I can't do it. But you put me with people, and making an impact with people is really my passion. The Reader's Digest version is I left corporate America after 10 years, and I did a couple Crown Financial Ministry classes at church and all those things that we do. And a friend of mine invited me into the life insurance business, and I said, "That sounds interesting. How do you spell that?" And I've found myself with an opportunity to sit down with young families at the time. This is back in the mid-'90s, and sitting down with families that had a need, but I had a platform and a program that was first and foremost for the company that I was working for. They were providing me, quote, leads, and it was really around mortgage protection. So I'm sitting down with young families. Now, remember, this is the 90s, so the numbers I'm going to use are dated a little bit. So here's a young family of 3 or 4, making total of combined income between, $60,000 and $80,000 a year, and the company I'm working for wanted me to provide them with a insurance package that was good for the company. Cover their mortgage. Here's a $60,000 mortgage. Yes, we had $60,000 mortgages back then. Those can't remember.
The good old 90s.
That was my first mortgage when we got married. I think we were married in '86. I think '88 we bought our first house, and it was a $64,000 mortgage. And man, we were like, holy, how are we going to pay for this? But covering the mortgage for $64,000, when I realized that the family I'm dealing with, if one spouse or the other was lost, the family couldn't afford to stay in the house. So I would sell them term insurance, and I know we're going to talk about the details. So here I'm offering them a solution to take care of them. So I would put together an insurance package that was, $300,000 or $400,000 of term insurance because that's what they needed. Well, the company fired me. I said, "Well, why you fired me?" They said, "Well, you're supposed to push the other stuff." I said, "Well, they can't afford it. It doesn't fit. You've got to do things that are right for the client," and that's not how they were built. So that was the beginning of my journey getting fired. There's another side of the story that included my wife telling me to go down this road, but and I listened to her. So, that opened my eyes to, from Crown Financial Ministries, model that they put out of, debt-free living and cash management. That really started my financial planning journey. I continued down that road. So I've been in the business, a little around 30 years at this point. So I eventually went down the CFP road. And I've always been in the mindset of corporate America can't tell me how to do this. I want to listen to the client and how do they need things designed and what's going to work best for them. So that's, you fast forward to the day of Prestige Planning and where we are. I listened to my business partner, Jeremy Keller. We met, 8 or 9 years ago. And I listened to how he put together a property and casualty package. And I went, man, I've never heard anything like this. At one time, I had a property and casualty license. I've since gotten it again. I said, I haven't heard a risk management profile put together on behalf of a client like you to, man, we could partner up because we were both client-centric. We were both about how can we help design something so the client can, A, have peace of mind, and B, achieve their financial goals. So I would say that's the Reader's Digest version. I absolutely love what I do. I love interacting with people, and I think that's my passion is to make a difference.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the unique things having worked with you is just that lots of companies and of any type in any industry can have the words on the wall, white glove service, right?
Right.
But knowing your story and your background and how you got into this, and the experience with corporate America, how that shaped your value of white glove service is it's special to us, and we see that in exactly what you just described, how you design plans, how you work with your clients, both on the P&C side and on the planning side. So we are going to get into it, specifically life insurance today. We know that recently, how recent is it? I think it was back in April, right? The SEC ruling on life insurance policy, or not life insurance policies, but non-competes.
Non-competes, yeah. Then they threw another one in there on corporate-owned policies. We'll go down that road.
Yeah, no, we're gonna get into it, but I think from the audience perspective, it can sometimes be a black box of like they hear life insurance policies, and a lot of our audiences, are business owners or people serving business owners, and it's an area where they like, okay, if I get hit by the ice cream truck, that's gonna cover me, but that's not the only reason to look into these things, and so we just want to. Today we're going to be talking about those policies, what they are, how they differ from one another. And so kind of just give an overview of what are the different types of life insurance policies that are available, and tell us a little bit about how they differ from one another.
Yeah, I mean, life insurance it's a dreaded word. You want to clear a room at a party, say, hey, I sell life insurance. Man, you're like, you got leprosy, It's one of those things. But life insurance is really the Swiss Army knife of planning. The art of it comes back to who's designing it. And unfortunately, like most industries, bad design creates bad experience. And when someone designs it on behalf of, again, I go back to, I got fired because I was designing the policies on the client's behalf, not the company I was working for's behalf, right? And I think the industry in and of itself has trained the advisors to sell for the company. Well, we design for the client. There's really two types of insurance. There's term insurance, which is rented coverage, and then there's permanent insurance. So that's not rented coverage, and that's more of an asset type policy. And there are a couple variances on permanent insurance. It's interesting that back in the day, it used to be only whole life, and whole life is the cash growth side of it is depending on the insurance company's success or their returns. Think of it as their internal profits go into. That's not really what happens, but it's based on the performance of the life insurance company. Then you have universal life, which is basically tied to treasuries. And then you have index universal life. Now I'm going down a wormhole. I'm going to come back out of it in a second. But index universal life can be tied to stock market indexes. We can use the S&P 500. We can use the NASDAQ. There are all kind of things there are different variances on that. And I like to keep it plain and simple. The more fancy you get, the more expense you throw into it. And again, I'm going down the wormhole, but that's the basics. But how does it work? And then most of the bad experiences have been, when you go into the mall, you walk into the center of the mall, and what do you see? You see these shiny jewelry stores. It's like, come to me, right? So we want to buy on emotion. We go, oh, man, that looks really good. And then 20 years down the road, we have this jewelry that's now scrap. It's gone by the wayside, right? So the same thing happens in the sales side or the presentation side of a life insurance strategy. Oftentimes it looks really good up front, but how do you maintain that? And how is it an asset or a Swiss Army knife down the road? term insurance is a very powerful tool, and there are a lot of applications. I own both permanent and term insurance for specific reasons. So that's kind of again, I'm trying to keep it simple without going down a wormhole, but happy to go deeper.
Yeah, no, just explain, the fact that you have both, a little bit of an overview of why you use both and how you use both term and universal.
Yeah, term insurance is, I'm scared of that ice cream truck, right? Something may happen, and right now I need more coverage if I step in front of that ice cream truck than down the road. We many times put a term program together that has conversion options on it. I can convert it to permanent. So we need a Band-Aid. It's for a specific purpose. I've even written term insurance for the purposes of covering security on a loan, right? The lender, the bank says, well, you get hit by the bus, Mr. Business Owner, Mrs. Business Owner. We want our money back, so you need to get a life insurance policy. Collaterally assign it to the bank like you would, your house, your mortgage, same difference. But permanent insurance, we use it in applications that I could go on for 2 hours. The audience would get bored, but am I designing it for future cash value to come out of it, to turn it into an income stream? Am I designing it, and can I modify it throughout the years? In other words, I need some significant coverage today if I get hit by that ice cream truck, but down the road I don't necessarily need that. My wife and I are empty nesters. We got 12 grandkids, so our need for life insurance has kind of changed a little bit over the years, like everybody else. Mm-hmm. So you don't need the death benefit as much, but now you need the cash value, the power of that cash value. The money grows tax deferred, and you can access it in a tax-free or tax-efficient way if you do it right. And I think most people's bad experience with life insurance comes from a bad design.
Yeah.
Right.
I wanted to go back to that because you did say earlier, bad design creates bad experience.
Yes.
And I think for business owners and people who know, okay, I need a term life insurance in case I get hit by the ice cream truck.
Right.
Right. Doesn't mean that it's going to be a good design. So how can business owners start to consider and evaluate the design of term life insurance? Maybe for me too, like explain it to me like I'm 5 years old, so that they can understand and start to make a distinction between good design, bad design, and how that might play out in the experience.
I now have one of my 5-year-old grandkids in my head. I'm going, how am I going to explain it? I'm just kidding. It really comes back to asking the business owner a couple questions. And the questions are, what do you want this to do today if you step in front of the ice cream truck? And then what do you want this to do tomorrow? And tomorrow could be nothing. I just want it to cover me for the ice cream truck. But most people that I know like a return on investment. They don't want to just waste their money. They don't necessarily rent an apartment or rent their home. They buy. So how can we design an income or a life insurance portfolio or strategy of policies that'll achieve those goals? So the bad experience is usually, hey, you can get $1 million permanent insurance policy, and you can put, for $1,000 a year. Again, I'm not giving an age or any of the underwriting that goes into that.
Sure.
And then they design it for a future cash flow. Well, there's two sides to the insurance strategy, and one is the design, and the second is the client's commitment to honoring the design. If you play it out, your car will run out of gas if you don't put gas in it, right? So if you want an electronic vehicle, you don't have to put gas in it. So different strokes for different folks. So the business owner designing what they want, what they need. And I know that we've got a couple topics we can talk about, but who are we designing this for, and what's the purpose? If it's a buy-sell, if it's a key man, what are we trying to do? Business owners don't want to spend a lot of money on it when they look at it as an expense. So if we can design it as an asset of the business or on behalf of the business, then it becomes more attractive.
Yeah, thank you for teeing me up. We should have him on more often as a co-host. I love that breakdown though of to the two questions: what do you want this to do today, and what do you want this to do tomorrow? And I think what you're teeing me up for is that can have a split in it too. What do you want this to do for you personally today, or what do you want this to do for the business today? So let's go down that second question, that second bucket of that first question first. Sorry, listeners, that's
who's on first.
Put that
really
image in your mind.
Yeah.
So let's just go into explaining one of the ways that we can use life insurance policy maybe today and tomorrow for business, and talk a little bit about key person insurance and why it can be such a benefit for business owners.
Yeah, you opened the can of worms a few minutes ago, Devin. I think we forgot Joey's even over here.
I'm silently watching.
You're silently
taking
watching.
notes. Yeah.
You opened the can of worms on the FTC. There
wasn't the SEC.
It was FTC.
FTC.
There's 5 board members on this blows my mind. The government overreach, and that's another podcast.
Yeah, we should settle down now.
Yeah, sorry. Cleansing.
Everybody take a deep breath.
But a panel of 5 put a vote out, and with a stroke of a pen, made non-competes void. Right. So if you have a non-compete in your business that you've said, okay, this is a very good person that's going to be a valuable asset as an employee or a key employee to this business, I'm going to tie him up with a non-compete. Well, none of us like to. I've signed non-competes before, and they've been nightmares, and vice versa. And you're praying that that key person doesn't cross the street and open a shop to compete against you, right? So the FTC has voided all those. So if you have one, it's now void. There are a couple elements that would make it still valid, but we're talking the highly compensated executive position, but those still need to be adjusted. So you can use life insurance for I call it the golden handcuff. Mm-hmm. And, my personal experience is if the golden handcuff is 80% good for the business owner and 20% uncomfortable, and 80% good for the key employee and 20% uncomfortable, that's probably a good idea. It's probably a good plan, because if there's not a little bit of give on both sides, then got the unfair advantage, right? So if we can design a strategy using life insurance for that key employee, it gives us the ability. I made in my notes here, there's a dreaded word. I'm going to throw it out, and then I'm going to take it back. But it's the word deferred comp. Right. So if we utilize the word deferred comp, we've opened a whole nother can of government words in the ERISA side, which is retirement. So we get restrictions on that. So think of deferred comp, but take the word out and say, okay, here's this bonus strategy that may or may not be tax efficient, meaning do I get a deduction? There's a tax play in this, but I don't want to get into the weeds of that today. But we can provide some tax efficiency to the business owner and or to the key employee. So how can the business owner set something up that is good for both parties that says, hey, if you stick around for X amount of years, let's just say 10 years, we're going to give you a benefit for doing so. If you walk away, you're leaving this bucket of money on the table for the business. In the meantime, if you get hit by the ice cream truck, we've designed it so we get the cost of our out-of-pocket from the business, we get our money back, but then your family now has something to replace a paycheck for at least a period of time. This wouldn't be designed to cover them in a death benefit into perpetuity, but it would at least soften the financial blow, if you will. Mm-hmm. So that's where we can go down the wormhole. How does that business owner want to design that? Here's the other cool thing: because we stay away from the deferred comp word and we stay away from the ERISA bucket, we can design it. If we have 3 key employees, each one of the 3 key employees can have a different design that's customized based on the key employee and the business owner's desire. So we don't have to do all for one. If you try to do that in the deferred comp world or the qualified or retirement plan world, we lose tons of flexibility in the design.
So the cost of that increased flexibility may be a little bit less tax efficient.
Correct.
A good read
Correct.
on that? Yeah. Okay.
Correct.
So you described a situation. We hear people talk about key man insurance, and they could be partners, but not necessarily partners. They could be managers who have significant responsibility. They could be salespeople who are generating tons of business and have lots of relationships. And it's interesting. You guys use the ice cream truck. We used to use the bus. And then the other day I heard like the donut truck. I'm like, these euphemisms are getting a lot more attractive. Like, is it better to get hit by an ice cream truck or a donut truck than a bus?
It lessens the blow.
Yeah. So, but
yeah.
But when we talk about key man insurance, it's like, well, I've got a person who brings in $1 million worth of sales, and if they get hit by whatever, it's going to take 5-6 months to find a replacement, 5 to 6 months to get them up to speed. We could be out $800,000, $1 million in sales. I need a life insurance policy to cushion that blow so that the business doesn't take a huge hit. And does some of the flexibility you're talking about allow us to do that and the golden handcuffs?
Sure.
Because that's a design where it's like I don't know. Where was that? 23. I'll tell Tavish.
I got it.
When you talked earlier about there's a today want, a tomorrow want. Like
right.
The today want is I don't want to go out of business if my key revenue generator something happens to him. The tomorrow is I want him to be doing that thing 20 years from now and
right.
not open up a shop across the street. So you're saying there's one product that could potentially cover both of those bases.
Well, there is, and that comes back to, I used the word earlier, insurance portfolio design, right? So maybe we take a piece of the hit by the bus coverage and we use term insurance. And then we partner that with a permanent insurance product that is focused on the cash value side, not focused on the death benefit side, right? So, again, I go back to I've seen so many really horrible designs in 30 years where it's, hey, if you put $100,000 a year into this policy, you'll be rich coming out the back end of this. Well, that also I got to go back to we're in the mall again, and here's the jewelry stores in the middle, and we're going, yeah, I can do that. Well, life happens. Yeah, $100,000 a year, yeah, no problem. Life happens. I blinked and I've got 12 grandkids. Life happens, I'm telling you.
Yeah, that $100,000 or a lot of $100,000 policies are probably sold in 2003 and 4 that weren't funded in 2008, 9, and 10.
Yeah, and you have to look at that as what does it do down the road, and can I commit to this? And everybody goes, well, a life insurance guy gets paid big commissions. Well, I would argue that's not true because we're going to take care of this program for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. I mean, I've got business on the books that I got 20-year term policies that I sold back in the day that they're now expiring, and I'm still taking care of them.
Yeah, and you've changed the beneficiary.
We changed
3 marriages. And
don't open that can of worms, Joey. By the way, in the state of Florida, this is freebie. This has nothing to do with this agenda, but you're required to change your beneficiary post-divorce. We had a client that intended to leave the life insurance policy to his former wife. Mm-hmm. He got remarried, and then he got sick and passed away. And he never changed the beneficiary post-divorce back to his ex-wife, which is where he wanted it to go. In the state of Florida,
so it just reverts to the policy owner?
It reverts to the estate.
Okay.
Mm. So now his will and his estate plan was to his current wife. So what he intended those funds to do, that the ex-wife got disenfranchised from what they agreed upon and what was supposed to happen. And there was nothing he could do about it. And why would current wife give ex-wife any funds? So
saying she didn't share the same benevolence that her late husband had.
No. Yeah, devil's in the details in some of this planning stuff.
Absolutely.
Well, that's a good point. That when you're, I keep going back to what's actionable. Like for the person who's listening, and they're saying, like, I love the pull quote: "Bad design creates bad experience." Well, and unfortunately, the experience is the lagging result there.
Right.
So, like, and Devin asked a great question: how do you know when you're participating in a process that's going to result in good design? And there were 2 questions that you talked about, like, what do you need today? What do you want today? And what do you want tomorrow? Because we have to make sure that we're covering these bases. I think the other thing is, is there talk in that conversation about what that life cycle looks like. You know, I think we hear the word like holistic, right?
Right.
Holistic legal services, holistic accounting services, holistic financial planning services. Well, if you're talking to somebody and the only thing you're talking about is life insurance,
Right.
that doesn't sound very holistic, right? Because there is some stuff that's required to service that policy over 20 or 30 years. But if that's the only thing, that's the only reason you're calling that phone number, I would say there wasn't a lot of good design, because you probably have more needs in your life that, you know, like just basic financial planning.
Sure.
You know, those are things too that I know that you guys do. But like going back to, if you're working with somebody and the only thing, you're only being asked one question, was like, what's the need that you have today? Or what's the need that you have tomorrow? And there's no and between those. And there's no conversation about the rest of your life, the ability to fund it, what your family looks like, where they're going to be in this equation 20, 30 years down the road. You're probably going to have a bad experience.
You probably are. You know, I use the word Swiss Army knife, and you know, if we're tracking through the woods, the Swiss Army knife, if we're tracking through the woods of planning, the Swiss Army knife's in your pocket. You know, you don't have it in your hand. You know, you have the things in your hand and in your, you know, forward looking, if you will, that need to be forward looking. The Swiss Army knife's in your pocket. Mm-hmm. You know, when you pull it out, you're going to pull it out to use it. So yeah, you're dead on, Joey, in the fact that the planning side of everything we do, the life insurance comes into the conversation as a byproduct of what makes you tick. The business owners that we tend to work with, they're small business owners. They're focused on their business. The majority of their net worth lies in their business. You know, I'm a small business owner. You're a small business owner. We went into small business ownership.
Majority?
Majority.
How about the entirety?
Yeah, the entirety. Yeah. I got a couple jokes. I'll stay away from there. But, you know, we want the American dream. We've done this, number one, because we have passion. Number two, because we want to pave our own path along the way. We want to make an impact in this world. We're called to be good stewards, and we want to do that. So, hey, let's go be a small business owner. We signed the front of the paycheck. Well, we didn't realize sometimes what we were getting into, but, you know, we're paving our own path along the way. And the majority of clients we work with are those small business owners. Their assets are their business and likely real estate. You say the word stock market, they're running for the door. They go, yeah, I do that because I have to, but I like to know what I own and why I own it. Mm-hmm. Therefore, I can manage. Risk comes down when knowledge goes up. Yeah. Across the board, right? I don't care if you're jumping on a fishing boat and going to go deep sea fishing, or you're going to be crazy and jump out of a great airplane. You know, I'm scared to death to jump out of an airplane because I don't know that the person who packed my parachute knew what they were doing. I assume they do. But if I've had 3,000 parachute jumps and I pack my own parachute, my risk mentally may go down. I still think it's the same. You know, I'm jumping out of a good airplane. But the planning road, the planning conversation begins to really expose how you could best use life insurance and pull that Swiss Army knife. You know, a hammer is a great tool. I am not handy. If my wife sees me going through the house with a hammer and she hasn't told me to hang up a picture, she's following me and going, what's he going to do? Right? I'm not skilled at that. My son the other day, he's now gotten good at putting trim work in the middle of a wall. I'm like, man, I'm going to try that. I'm not doing that because I'll go through more lumber than I can afford. But it's the right tool. The hammer is a good tool if you're hanging a picture, but if you're fixing plumbing, probably not the best tool to start with.
Can you just, like, I think that's a really practical insight. It seems like it's maybe so obvious you don't want to go into it, but your history, right, in your corporate America, I think business owners all the time are getting, you know, financial planners or even insurance salesmen coming to the door saying, hey, we're going to sell you term life insurance policy. Now, I would assume a lot of our clients and, you know, business owners in general, anybody who's getting sold something immediately has their defenses up. But what are some of the ways that they can evaluate, like, whether or not, and I know we've talked about a lot of the questions and what's the focus of this person, and are they just trying to sell me something, or are they considering what my needs are today or tomorrow for this policy? But what are some of the ways that business owners can kind of start to identify what you just talked about in that whether or not I should just turn and run, or if I should engage in a conversation.
That's a good question. The interesting thing is, if that's the only thing people are talking about, if someone's knocked on your door and said, "Hey, I got this," whether it's life insurance or whatever widget they're knocking on your door for
Solar panels,
you get a tax credit for that. I don't even know if that's true or not. So anyway, squirrel. When you step into it, I think you've got to go back to the basics. Why am I buying this? How does it fit? Right. I do the same thing for property and casualty insurance. Disability insurance. I know we're talking about life insurance as our core conversation today, but, disability insurance. We have clients making, multiple six-figure incomes. They're the goose laying the golden egg. The golden egg is the cash. Well, what have we done to ensure that the egg-laying side of it, their revenue side? So we have customized strategies, and I'm going to say this, and listeners are going to go, "Oh, but that's expensive." But, it's $100,000 a month of disability insurance coverage. How do you do that? I can tell you most people who would want that type of coverage don't know it's available. It's a custom design. It fits a specific strategy, and the clientele that we presented to say, I would have bought that yesterday had I known, because I realize my family can't continue their income. And you bring up an interesting question. Is it good for me?
Right.
And I think you got to go back to, why am I doing this? You don't go, we have 4 kids. We still have 4 kids. Growing up, we were a family of, my kids growing up, we were a family of 6. I didn't have a sports car till we were empty nesters. Why? Because couldn't get all the kids in the car.
Mm-hmm.
That's a bad idea.
Very practical.
Yeah, very practical. They left. I bought the convertible. And that was fun for 2 years, and I got rid of it. So why would you make the same? Why wouldn't you make the same purchasing decisions on a financial strategy as you do, a car, right? And I think that goes back to, if the business owner is asking the question, number one, how does this benefit me, and how do I get out of it? How do I stop it? How do I change it? What are life's curveballs that can come, and how does this work in my life journey? Did I answer the question?
Yeah, no, that's. I think the simple way to ask my question, it was very long-winded, would have been, what questions should business owners be asking of you if you try to sell them life insurance policy? And you just gave them, 3 or 4 questions that are nailed it. So great job. I set you up poorly. I want to go back and shift back to the FTC ruling.
Yes.
And because it does strip business owners from the ability to offer that as a benefit to it doesn't offer any protection for the employee now that, they have a non-compete. Like, the employee can kind of do what they want. There's nothing that requires them to stay with the business now.
Right.
And so it exposes a lot of risk for the business owner. If they have a guy, generating $1 million in revenue a year for the business, I want to dig into how can small businesses leverage, maybe, and we probably kind of already dabbled in this a little bit, but how they can leverage life insurance as a part of an employee benefit package to attract and retain those talented people in their company. We mentioned Key Life, and maybe you want to focus on the second question here, which is, you mentioned earlier that like 80%, it's got to be 80% good for both parties and 20% hit. So some listeners are key leaders in companies. Can you focus on them maybe and help inform them of, like, hey, not all golden handcuffs are bad, and what are things that they can look for in those policies or those packages that would be a benefit, they can recognize as a benefit to them?
Yeah, sure. I mean, and in my opinion, the fun of this, I'm a little twisted in some ways. The fun of this is the design part, right? It's if you tell me you can't do something, that drives me bonkers. I'm going, watch me. Now, I may end up being wrong at the end of the journey, but we had a heck of a lot of fun proving me wrong, and so be it, right? But I think you go back to the business owner recognizes cost of turnover, and the more high earner or high impact employee that's in that business, the higher the cost of turnover. So that is an opportunity cost that is lost if that person leaves. So how do I keep that person here? It's going to cost me one way or another. So, Prestige Planning, we're forward-thinking financial risk management. You have a financial risk in turnover. So if I can take a couple shekels that I'm going to have a cost one way or another, if I can manage or I can proactively manage that cost to know that, okay, if this person leaves, I have now set aside a bucket of money that I could reach into if needed, and I could use that to, A, fund the next hire, or maybe I could hire 2 people part-time or third-party outside consultants just to come in and, take it over. I think the other thing you have to think about, if this key employee is client-facing, what's the damage control you need to do on behalf of those clients to keep them from leaving? If you have, so in addition to hard employee turnover costs, you have those hard exposure costs. What's it doing to my image, right? So if you have a bucket of money, if that person leaves, that you can use, that you've set aside, and you can be very efficient in that, I think you have to consider that. So again, that goes back to the design. What are you trying to do? Unfortunately, a bad design is, when times get tough, bad designs yield, that's the first thing that stops, right? Okay, I talk to so many people, including young people, and, financial times get tough, and the first thing they do is, well, I'm not paying my life insurance, right? And that just yields, it's a bad design. So I understand things happen, but that also means somebody with a younger person, you don't want to build a design that has got so much financial pressure on it that it was bad to begin with. The life insurance guy wins, or gal wins. They get a big commission, and they go on, and the client is left to deal with the mess. That's where it's 80% bad for the client, 99% good for the advisor.
Right. So going back to that question, I could have simplified it a lot better. What questions should the employee ask if their employer comes to them and says, "Hey, we want to set you up with a life insurance policy, and help the business in the future." They're not offering this to just anybody in the business. But what are the questions that the employee could ask? Are they the same that a business owner should ask, or are they different? Because I've had experiences in the past where we're talking with clients about offering a life insurance policy to a key employee, and I don't know the details of how it was presented and the conversation around that, but it was immediately red flags, like, no way, I'm not doing this. And there could have been all sorts of reasons why they did that. They didn't want to they don't want to have handcuffs on them in general. But what are the questions they could have asked during that conversation, the employee, to help?
Yeah, again, I go back to the 80-20 rule. So putting the hat of the employee on, if I'm the employee sitting here, I would say, I like 80% of this, but this 20% I don't like. And as the business owner should respond and say, well, you don't own the business, but I'm extending a benefit to you that is going to enhance your financial future, right? So the employee should say, well, why don't you just give me the money today? And the employer will respond, because it has no value for either one of us down the road. I'm going to give you the money. You're going to go spend it. So this is designed to be a benefit for you sticking around in the future. I'm not giving you, the business owner will not give you the additional cash. It's going to go into this program. And if you agree to the program and agree to the insurance, you're going to get a benefit down the road. In the meantime, if you step out in front of that ice cream truck with sprinkles on it, I had to go there. If you step out in front of that ice cream truck, we're going to take care of your family with this program. And if you stick around, it's going to be something that's going to be very attractive to you down the road. And because we want you to stay here, you're investing long term in us. We're going to do the same thing. And yes, it has some wins for us. It has some wins for you. It has some loses for us and costs for us and costs for you. But if you're here for the purpose and the passion of the business, this just comes along and enhances it. And I think the question that the business or the employee should ask is, what does this do for my family? And if the employee is of the mindset, I just need cash, 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 it's a bad deal. You're setting yourself up for failure before you even start it.
It's interesting too that I think that conversation could shed some light on whether you really want, whether anything is going to be successful in keeping this person around. I think that there's a lot that you said there that we could spend some time unpacking, but part of what you said was essentially if the person is on board with your values, your vision, your mission, and you want to keep them on board and they want to stay on board, then this is going to work out great for both of you. And if you're getting a response back, or you're the employee, I'll take the opposite tack of that, and you just can't get past the money that you're not getting that's going into this thing that you have to stick around to get, or your family. And I think, I also think that when you're talking to a real, like a rock star 30-year-old, 40-year-old, that family protection piece, I'm not saying like Devin's got 3 children. I know he wants to protect his family. But I can tell you, when I was 30, I thought I was bulletproof. And it was like, I will stop the donut truck before it hits me. I will never leave my kids.
I can serpentine.
Right. So, it's if you're saying like, I just can't see past giving the money up, maybe step back and go, are you really bought in to what this organization's trying to accomplish, or is it just a paycheck to you? And it's not a bad answer to say, no, I'm just interested in the paycheck. But if we're talking about this in the kind of a more universal context of looking out for your family, being somewhere where you're just there for the paycheck long term is probably not great for your family. Like
right.
Pretty soon your wife's going to get tired of you coming home moaning and bitching and complaining, and no amount of paycheck is going to make her want to be around you from 6:30 to 8:30 in the evening when you're miserable because of the place you've been spending all your time.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And, it goes back to the culture. And if you're on the employee side and you have an employer that's stepping up and saying, I want to put this package together, that employer, contrary to what you may believe, is really looking out not only for the business, because the business owner has to make decisions to put the business first, take all the people out, including themselves, so that all the families that are taken care of by the horsepower of this business are first, right? So if you've got a business owner offering it, the likelihood of the culture being right, yeah, if you use this on the wrong culture, this is a train wreck. I go back to where we started. It's a bad life insurance strategy. Everybody's going to be a little ticked off, and it's not going to end well.
Yeah.
The only one happy is the person that put the package together.
Not everybody's ticked off. There's one.
Yeah, one guy or gal in the room. That's me. I'm just kidding. I hate it when plans come apart.
Yeah,
it's time wasted.
Mark, we love hearing stories, and maybe there's one that comes to mind of how like a case study of how you've seen life insurance just make a significant impact in the life of a business. Is there a story that comes to mind, and tell it, just kind of give us the insight into context as much as possible, and what was the result?
Yeah, in 30 years, I got a bunch of them. So, it's
get another cup of coffee.
It really is. You have to be. I think you have to go into the examples with a little bit of case study, and it's not that. Here's the funny thing. Everybody thinks that you're buying life insurance to die, right? Everybody wants to go to heaven. No one wants to jump the line, right? That's just a fact, right? But it's not a death product. It's actually a life product. It's called life insurance. And the back end of it is, okay, God forbid, something happens, my family's taken care of. Well, it's the other side of it with the asset-based side that I think when you come back and you realize the examples that I have. So I'll just give you a quick couple of case studies where the business owner has a living benefit or a living experience to the strategy that's put into play. And it's I could come up with several ones where we've had clients that have passed away, and you deliver the death benefit check, and the family's taken care of. That's kind of black and white. You get that. It did its job. But it's using the asset, that Swiss Army knife, when you have to pull it out of your pocket and do it. So, we've got. I had a client that a longtime client. We set up the strategy so that they could, God forbid, if they passed away early, that they were in a position where the family would be taken care of. Well, the strategy was set up to where the policy was a permanent policy, so it had cash value to it. And at the end of the day, they were transitioning the business, and the business was being transitioned to Generation 2. And Generation 2 had no money, right? So now the policy, and by the way, they weren't these weren't Generation 2 relatives, they were key employees. There was one key employee. But the business owner had the ability, because we set the cash value strategy up in an efficient way, they had the ability to enhance the exit of the owner, the founding owner, to the key employee group. Let's just call them Gen 2, because they had the ability to leverage that life insurance. They put it up as collateral to the bank so that the purchaser could go. They didn't have to come out of pocket 20% to finance the business exit. That's one of them. Another one that's in play is when we have three. This is an ongoing strategy. We have three key partners. I'll tell you one of the other. I don't mean a squirrel for a second, but how you own a policy is probably as important as the policy design. So we set these strategies up in a separate entity, happen to be a partnership entity, which I'll come back to in a minute with another legislation change that. Well, actually, this isn't legislation. This one went all the way to the Supreme Court. But, how you own the policies, we set them up so that they're owned in a partnership. And the partnership is, the full intent of that partnership is to take care of the business owners should they decide to either leave the business. You will leave your business either vertically or horizontally.
Right. Everybody has succession.
Yep. Back to that jump in the line thing, right? So, if we design it and own it correctly, and we've done this, we've designed it so that the business owners, God forbid, they get hit by the bus or the ice cream truck, their families are taken care of. But at the same time, it is designed for peace of mind. As they exit, they get to take it with them for a retirement, a supplemental retirement plan strategy. So what I can tell you is, over the years, when you design the strategy and you implement it, many times it's like you buy that new car and you spend the first 30 minutes with the sales agent and they show you all the bells and whistles. And then you get home and you go, where was that button again? I know there's this car turns into a submarine, but I just can't remember where the button is. But what I've seen over the years is, as the client gets more familiar and comfortable with it, they understand why it's there. They understand. They're beginning to see it play out and go, oh, I get that. And along the way, I've seen and experienced and helped business owners. You leverage those tools in other purchases, in other business growth. So that, I think, are a couple good examples. And, along the way, the other side of it is that peer protection. We're working with a couple clients right now that have some medical challenges, right? The medical challenge, how do you get them underwritten? Well, we do things just a little bit different. I gather the client's medical. I don't take an application first. We gather the client's medical information. We reach out to the doctors. We order all their medicals. We do a lot of work. We actually order, the exam. Sometimes, the blood and urine. Send a nurse out to the house or place of business. We gather all that, and we say, okay, company 1, company 2, company 3, what would you give us based on these circumstances? So we kind of know where we are. I'll tell you this experience. This is an interesting one. We have a client we've been working with for a while. We already put him through this process, and contrary to his belief and his opinion of his health, he thinks he's super preferred, which is, by the way, better your health, the cheaper the lower the cost of insurance. And he had another non-specialist advisor tell him, well, you're preferred. I'm looking at you, and you're preferred. Well, what's going on underneath the surface? The surface, right? You don't know. Oh, and I've had this happen. How's your health? Well, it's great. Had a heart attack 2.5 years ago. I never felt better since. Well, I've got some personal experience of that. I had a health scare a couple weeks ago. 3 stents stuck in my heart. I can tell you personally, I'm laying there looking at the light on or they're going to do a heart cath on me. I didn't mean to talk about this, but
We can edit it out.
It's
if you
good
want,
stuff.
but
no, I'm fine.
good.
It's
really good.
bonus. It's bonus stuff, right? And I'm laying there looking up, and I see this light, and I'm like, oh, okay, Lord, is that the light? No, that says GE. So, right? And I'm like, well, I know where I'm going. So that's the first thing. I'm not interested in jumping the line. So, if you could wake me up after this, that'd be great. But I actually felt that I knew my business partner was okay because we've done the things that we were talking about on this podcast. And I know my family's okay because I've taken the right steps. So coming back full circle to getting the medical underwriting right. By the way, I'm uninsurable as of this podcast. I need some time to go by, right? That's the other thing. What you put off today may cost you tomorrow, right? And that's fact. And I've seen it happen over and over and over again. And this gentleman thinks he's super preferred, and he had another advisor who is bank-based telling him, oh, you're super preferred. These guys are trying to sell you a bill of goods and run the cost up on you. And it took an act of Congress, God, and anybody else you could think in his life to get him to understand, we've already medically underwritten you. So if I've done that and I'm presenting you numbers that are real, you have an opportunity to really make a good business decision versus, hey, here's a super preferred quote. Let's make a decision on that. And then I'm coming back going, oh, well, surprise, guess what? So we try to get the facts and the plan together first so that we have a good design so we don't have that bad experience.
Yeah, I love the no surprises mantra. Like anything that you can do in life to avoid surprises is a good thing, right? You mentioned that earlier in the podcast. Risk goes down when knowledge goes up.
I was going to ask. I love the Swiss Army analogy. Can you think of a case where you were surprised and you're like, I didn't know Swiss Army knife could be used like that, where a client used a policy or the asset side of a policy to do something that was kind of novel in your experience?
Well, if I back up in time and, been doing this.
You're really old. You've been doing this a long time.
Yeah,
So
I know, 30 years. I love learning. So maybe I can answer your question with this analogy. Life insurance is something that hasn't changed as far as legislative issues on the life insurance since really the early 1900s. It's just never changed. We see the tax code change every year. See all kind of stuff change. Life insurance has never changed. The application of life insurance has changed. But what I have seen that you go, oh, holy cow, this is amazing, is somebody who started a strategy 20 years ago has followed the plan, and it yields the results or better than what they intended. That to me is amazing because most everything has not been presented right, has not been designed right, and didn't necessarily have the end goal in mind. But the Conley Act or the Conley decision at the Supreme Court has impacted what I would call buy-sell agreements between owners, right? And you can go look this up. I'm working on some podcasts and some content on our platform. But basically, if you have an estate tax issue, if your estate is large enough where you have an estate tax issue, and you have life insurance owned by your business on you, the owner, let's say your business is worth $10 million and you have $10 million of company-owned death benefit life insurance, and you have a second partner, that life insurance owned by the business, you get hit by the ice cream truck, the business now has $20 million in it. You have just, and the intent is that is to buy, that $10 million is to buy your percentage of the business from your partners, the deceased family members. Mm-hmm. That has doubled the estate valuation. So owning the policy inside the business has got a double whammy now as of, I believe it's June 1st. It's when this is very recent, and it's got the entire insurance planning world in a turmoil because you set something up, and I've got a client right now that we're working on a meeting. He's not aware of this, but he's got a $20 million policy owned in a business thinking that, okay, that's going to buy my interest out. And the amazing thing is that his valuation of his percentage ownership in the business is not equal to $20 million. He's got more coverage than he needs. But if he gets hit by the bus, then ice cream truck.
Yeah. Hey, with a Marciano cherry on it.
Marciano cherries. Love those cherries, man. So he gets hit by the bus. That policy has now done more damage than they thought based on the current decision. So that's the other side of planning is you got to adjust as time goes. And if you now that policy is owned in the business, again, this is a client with an estate tax issue, no matter what. So that's going to shoot them in the foot. But if they transfer that current policy out of that business, you got a transfer for value rule that's going to really cause a tax implication, right? So if you know you have an estate tax, if you have a taxable estate, you have to have a different lens that you're doing your planning vision through compared to somebody who doesn't have an estate tax issue.
Do you see, I'm asking you to look in your crystal ball, do you see any legislative remedy to that decision? Will it get fixed or?
I mean, I don't think it'll get fixed, but what do I know? I mean, go down look at what our country's spending. Look at all the things that, God's in control and I'm not. If he comes down, does some things to wipe out a bunch of, anyway,
estate tax laws.
Estate tax laws. George Steinbrenner is the smartest guy on the planet. He passed away in 2010. The estate tax was 0 that year. So
good timing.
Good timing. Imagine that.
So it was like a 1-year window, wasn't it?
It was a 1-year window, right? So if you're good enough, and again, if you want to pick what day you get to the front of the line, if you can tell us when that is, knock yourself out. But I don't see that changing, and I don't know that for those who don't know, I know we're talking about life insurance, but this is important. Mm-hmm. The estate tax limits or exemptions are changing December 31st, 2025. You wake up January 1st, 2026, and let's just say they're cut in half. The exemptions are cut in half. That's not correct, but for today's purposes, it's significant. You've left a planning opportunity on the table between December 31st, 2025 and January 1st, 2026. So we're doing a lot of planning on the estate tax with life insurance. And if I go down that Swiss Army knife, it's, can I pay for $1 million of estate taxes for $200,000 out of pocket? Can I do that? Well, the logic is I can keep that $200,000. I'm never dying, so I can keep that $200,000 working, and I can make it worth $1 million. Well, what you've done is you've made it worth another $1 million that's now estate taxable. So, entity planning, trust planning, doing some things correctly. Just because I put an estate or an irrevocable trust-owned policy in place doesn't mean I don't have the use of some of the asset that's in that irrevocable trust if designed right. But that's the logic I put in it. You're going to pay the estate tax. If I can do it for fewer dollars out of pocket leveraging insurance, is it a good business decision? Mm-hmm. That's a whole nother can of worms, by the way.
Well, that opportunity, you've seen that whittled away for a lot of taxpayers because the unified credit got so big, and now it's going to come back into play. So you're not paying attention to it. Yeah.
The other thing, I think, I go back to something I said earlier, Joey, is your health. We always kick that can down the road. And I had a gentleman I was working with, I think the world of this gentleman, but his advisor said he's got enough money he doesn't need to worry about estate taxes. He can afford to pay him.
I'm sure his kids feel great about it.
Yeah.
Well, but he was younger, right? I have another client. They're business owners. They're elderly, north of $20 million. Health issues. We got them insured, and the math on their tax dollars compared to premium was if they lived to their life expectancy, they would have spent 40 cents on the dollar for the premium for the tax. 40 cents on the dollar. The estate planning attorney out of Ohio, nobody around here, so all my estate planning friends don't have to worry about that, said you don't need it, you have enough, your kids can pay the tax, and they should be very happy with what's left over. My question to that is, how is that being a good steward? Mm-hmm. The Bible says, render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's. So if we have the ability to leverage the tax rules that Caesar put out there into play, let's use them. Shame on us if we don't. Let's be a good steward. I understand there's a cost to it, but when you look at it as you're putting a dollar from the left pocket to the right pocket, you still may have access to it. You can still leverage it in different ways. It's not a spent dollar. You're going to pay those estate taxes.
Yeah.
And for those people who don't have liquidity, i.e., it's a business. I've got a ton of these clients. They're business owners and they own real estate. They own hard assets. The liquidity is very, very, very thin. The estate tax man cometh 9 months after death, right? And they come a knocking, and your kids are going to go. And that's when the fire sale happens. They go, well, somebody's been waiting on you to kick the bucket because the guy across the street who's been wanting to buy your property is
because your advisor said you could afford it.
Yeah. Anyway, I won't go down that road. I will go down that road. Certified financial planner designation has 6 segments to it, 6 sections. And a lot of CFPs don't really leverage all 6 or don't have a lot of experience. And that could be because the corporate environment they're in just doesn't allow them to do that. That doesn't mean they're bad CFPs. There are a lot of good ones. But I think there's a lot more to planning than just the portfolio-based planning. And I don't mean to offend any of my friends. I got a lot of friends in the business, been in this a long time, but a lot of clients don't have a significant stock market portfolio, and they're being underserved for planning purposes. A lot of our clients have less than 10% of their total net worth in an investable portfolio. Therefore, they're not getting the planning that they so well need.
Well, Mark, I mean, you've been a wealth of knowledge. Obviously, we loved having you on the show. As we kind of wrap it up and bring this ice cream truck in to deliver the goods,
you got me focused on that. You forgot the whipped cream in between the ice cream and the cherry.
I knew it was going to get bigger.
I'm not allowed to have that on my new diet. That's what they took that away from me.
That's what your underwriter said.
No, that's what the cardiologist said. Can't have that.
For the small business owner out there new to life insurance, what are some of the steps that they could take to get started, just to keep learning and figuring out what's the best policy for them at this point in time, given the state of their business?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, call me.
I was going to say, call
I've bumped into and worked with so many life insurance professionals over the years, and most of the time the conversation starts like this: well, Devin, thanks for calling me. How much life insurance do you want to buy? And then you go, I don't know. You can do some math to it. You can say, and these are kind of standard in the industry, 10 times your earnings or 8 times your earnings plus all your debt. That's a Band-Aid or a beginning. I think it's coming back to purpose. It's coming back to what do you want this thing to do? Do you want it to take care of your family? I've had this is another funny one, and I know we're wrapping up, so sorry.
It's all good.
It's I don't want to leave my wife rich so she can run off with the pool boy, right? Get over it. It's a love product. It's something where you go, I want to make sure she doesn't have to run off with the pool boy named Giovanni. Anyway, I think that's, just having an open conversation. To me, it's kind of fun. I guess I'm a little messed up in my thinking. I just enjoy it. But if you're serious about really sticking your toe, how do you develop and design a portfolio that fits and works for you? It's not just, hey, let me call Select Quote and see what $1 million will cost me.
Yeah, I will go back to the 2 questions, which I think is a great way to frame this. Sit down with somebody like yourself who's going to give you the time and the space to hear what's the current thing. Like Devin and I have talked about this before, like fear, pain, those are the things that drive action and decisions. Rarely are people just inspired to make a life change, right?
Yeah.
But you have an event, somebody close to you has an event, your wife says, what's going to happen? My mom just went through this and I see how she's struggling. Where are we at? And you're like, okay, I have to do something today. And you need somebody who's going to sit across from you and probe a little bit deeper than I need $1 million or $5 million or $10 million. Well, why? What does that current need look like? But then the follow up of well, we can do that. Tell me what are your hopes for your children?
Right.
How old are they? What's your parents' financial situation look like? Do you guys have property? Is there stuff in the family that's coming your way? What's your business look like? Who are your partners? Who are your future partners? I think that's those kind of conversations, and I would say, just knowing you, I've known you for 24 years probably, because we met shortly after I came to this area. I would say, like, you do enjoy people.
I do.
You love the conversation, and when we get together, we may talk product because I'm a client of yours as well. But we also talk about a lot of other things that add value to my life and my decisions and the ways I'm thinking. And I hope I do the same for you. But I would just say that would be those conversations. Like, if you're not getting more insight into your life and lowering the anxiety level across multiple areas with a financial advisor that you're talking to, shop around a little bit. Go talk to somebody else, because I would see that as one of your superpowers, is just the ability to sit across the table and give the space to hear and to ask the questions, to prompt the things that are going to allow that person to walk out of the room with a lot less anxiety or worry than they had when they walked in.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And, you know, the things we do are custom designed. You know, people ask me, my wife says to me all the time, she goes, what is it exactly that you, I know you're in the financial planning space, so what do you do?
My wife asked me the same thing. I've been doing the same thing for 30 years. She still doesn't know.
And I tell her, I said, you know, I try to help people find the opportunities to be a good steward in their life, right? And the Bible says, leave an inheritance to your children's children, not your kids, right? You think about it. If you live to the ripe age of 80, the likelihood of your kids being in their 60s and successful is pretty high. Well, your grandkids, I got a bunch of them, you know, they're going to be in their 30s and 40s, and they're going to be in that spot where life's just squeezing the life out of them financially. So to leave an inheritance to them is biblical, right? It's what's our purpose in life. So I just love knowing people. I love what makes them tick. I want to find what their passion is for ministry or organizations that help make our world better. To end on a politically incorrect tone, I had a client in the office that said they were interested in funding anything that would fund Planned Parenthood or against the Second Amendment, and I'm like,
we're not the right fit for you.
Thanks for coming out.
Well, Mark, I mean, thank you. You're perfectly welcome to share that opinion on this podcast.
That's why I shared it. We're amongst our people, you know, and I am what I am.
Yeah, we've really enjoyed having you. Thank you for sharing just so many insights. We'll include links to the website and LinkedIn and where people can find you at. Also, the Conley Act. All that will be in the description. But we just want to say thanks again.
Hey, thanks for having me and putting up with me. And, you know, if it's not fun, I don't want to do it. So I hope we've made this enjoyable, a boring topic of life insurance.
Right.
Fun.
Yep. And if you are listening and you have enjoyed this podcast, please like, comment on wherever you listen to your podcasts. If you're interested in learning more about Prestige, those links will be in the description. If you're interested in learning more about Axiom, you can find us at our website, axiomstrategic.com. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook, also LinkedIn. Thank you again for listening, and we hope you have a great week.